Hi everyone, this is Sophia from the Unfair Advantage. We have a really special guest today, Claire. She's from Brown University. I know you all have been really requesting an Ivy League university for a student from an Ivy League university to come in. So we got Claire. So Claire, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, hi everyone. My name is Claire. I'm currently a senior at Tesla STEM High School, which is a magnet STEM school in Redmond, Washington. I'm a dancer, I'm a middle sister, and I'm a visual artist. I applied for Brown Early Decision this year, so I'll be attending next year in the fall as a computer science and neuroscience double concentration.
Okay, so the main objective of this call is for you to break down your high school journey. So what was your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year was like, and how were you academically? What did you do for extracurriculars? And any test scores would be helpful.
Okay, so do you want me to sort of just walk through it in chronological order?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, got it. So in 8th grade, I got into my current high school. It's basically a lottery school. So that means that everyone just applies and then they pull it out of a random number generator and then 150 kids get in. So I was one of the 150 that got in for my class. It's a STEM magnet school, which means that my school focuses on STEM subjects. We have like lab classes, we have research opportunities, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different. We didn't have a gym, we didn't have a library. So like different from a public high school, but yeah. And so in my freshman year, I believe I didn't take any AP classes, but all of the classes at my high school are like honors or accelerated. So most of those classes were just built in. It was kind of everyone takes the same classes. I joined a bunch of clubs because everyone was saying like, oh, in your freshman year, you should be joining all the clubs just to see what you like. Um, in middle school, I had already been dancing. So in freshman year, I was a competitive dancer. Um, I think that was my main extracurricular. I was also doing art on my Instagram, and I wasn't heavily involved in any of the extracurriculars that took off later on. So, like, most of what I put, for example, on my application, that all started in sophomore or junior year. So, moving on to sophomore year, that is when I became a little more heavily involved in Fbla. So that was one of my big extracurriculars. I also took AP Bio in my sophomore year. And so AP Bio was a class that I really, really enjoyed. And I talked to my teacher because I was thinking that I wanted to find something in the summer that was biology related. Because at that point, I was thinking, oh, maybe I want to go into something related to biology since I feel like I'm pretty good at this class. And that's how I discovered iGEM. So sorry, this is sort of jumping all over the place, but iGEM stands for International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. And this was basically, it's an international competition, but so there are teams all over the world. But there was a high school team based in Seattle, which is where I'm from, and I found them through my AP biology teacher. So I ended up going to an introductory meeting. I didn't really know what they were or what iGEM was, but I was thinking, like, might as well give it a try. And I got a couple of my friends to come with me, so that's always nice. And then I ended up becoming really involved in it. So it was obviously my first year, but within a few months, I was promoted by the advisor to one of the iGEM leads. So there's like a leadership team and then it's a big team. So the whole team is like 43 people. I forgot to mention that. It's a really big team. So then there was a leadership like board, you could call it, of around 8 teams, and each of us led like an individual group of people. And so I was promoted to leadership, and that overall was just a really fun experience. I was part of the public relations team, so we did a lot of like speaking. We hosted a couple of workshops. We ran a summer program related to teaching middle schoolers about biology, except we got teams, other iGEM teams from around the world to host that in their countries. So it was like an international collaborative summer camp type thing. And then in November of my junior year, we got to fly to Boston for our jamboree, which is like the actual competition part of it, where we present our project and meet everybody, all of the other teams. So that was super fun. And we ended up getting a bronze medal, which was not what we were shooting for, but something that I've learned is that you should be doing all of these experiences for the process of it and not the end goals. Like the jamboree part where we got our prizes or whatever, that was a very small component of the entire experience as a whole. So iGEM became a very big part of my high school journey, although in my junior year, so the second year of iGEM, our team had to disband due to not having enough advisors, not having lab space, and then obviously the COVID pandemic hit, so then we couldn't really replace or find all of the resources that we needed. So the iGEM team disbanded in my junior year, start of junior year, or like mid junior year, and that was very unfortunate. But what happened was a small group started, like we sort of branched out into a new organization called Joggle. So Joggle stands for Just One Giant Lab. It's like this international giant research laboratory that's all, it's like an online, like a network sort of. So this specific team was based in Seattle. I believe we were called like Joggle at Sound Bio at first, or like we later changed our name to Cytozyme Diagnostics. So our main goal revolved around creating rapid testing for COVID-19 because at the time there was like a huge shortage in testing. I'm sure all of you guys remember that too. But because of the testing shortage, we wanted to use some pre-existing methods and try to see if we could build reagents that we could later form into kits, or like reach out to some other research laboratories where they could form it into kits and we could just provide like the process or the procedure. That was our goal. So that was kind of nice because it was like iGEM couldn't happen anymore, but we sort of had this continuation, and it wasn't the whole team. It was very different. This time we were working with graduate students and like grown professionals. It was very few of us were high schoolers, so it was a very different experience. But Joggle was super cool just because they were like, I think when I joined, there were only around 200 people in the network, so like the Slack server. But now in the present, it's probably like 2,000 members now. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah. So right now I'm sort of just talking about my track with science and research. So I'll continue going on that track first before I'll sort of like go back and then cover the other extracurriculars I did, since I want to cover each one sort of chronologically so it makes more logical sense. So that was Joggle. Also in my junior year, my school offered our juniors, we participated in a research competition. It was called SURSEF. So if you guys have heard of ISEF, which is like this international, really large science fair. I think it's probably one of the largest international science fairs. And SURSEF is basically just the local level of that. So like those who go to SURSEF will go to WASEF, which is the state level, and then we can qualify for ISEF, which is the international. So everyone in my grade who took our psych and forensics course participated in SURSEF. So then I did as well. And my project was centered around basically it was sort of an intersection between bioinformatics and like I think it was behavioral sciences, which was behavioral and social sciences. That was my category. And I basically studied auditory hallucinations based on what people wrote in Reddit posts. So I took from like public available data and took a bunch of those, analyzed the words within them, and then the research was on like how auditory hallucinations manifest differently within different people that are struggling with different mental health disorders. So that was my very first research project. Actually, probably my very first independent individual project that was of that size. And honestly, it was a very stressful experience, but it lasted for the whole year. We got a lot of guidance from our teacher. And then in the end, we had to go virtual, but we did end up competing. So I competed virtually and had my trifold just like behind me. And I ended up getting third in my category, which similarly to the bronze medal for iGEM wasn't like exactly what I was aiming for, but I was happy with it in the end. So like now looking back on it, I'm proud of the work that I did there. But at the time I was thinking, oh, like a lot of other people did better than me. Like, anyways, yeah. So again, I would recommend viewing all of your experiences as like important and beneficial because of the process and not because of whatever the end result is. But yeah, so this research experience I did with a mentor at the University of Washington. So that's like in Seattle, in my area. I just reached out and he mentored me through this research project. And then after that, later on, I talked to him and we actually ended up doing another project together. This was for a different competition. It was called like the AMIA High School Scholars Competition or something like that. So if you haven't heard of AMIA, it's like, I think it's the American Medical Informatics Association or something like that. But it's basically a bioinformatics research competition. So this time I had a little bit of experience in it, but I was sort of on a time crunch. So yeah, I used Reddit again just because I had some of the methods that I needed for that. And this time I analyzed like whether or not analyzed. I basically tried to build a tool that could tag different posts based on the possible diseases that were being covered in it. So it's sort of like a sorting slash filtering thing. And that ended up getting me chosen to present at the symposium. So the the annual symposium occurs in November, I think, and so in November of 2020, so just like this past year, that's when I presented my project. It was a 10-minute presentation. I posted it on YouTube too, so I I can show you guys my YouTube or something if you are interested in seeing that. But this result, my AMIA result, actually came out a day after my Brown application was due. So Brown did not end up hearing about, or like they didn't see this in my award section just because I didn't know whether I had been selected yet. But I did give them a research supplement, and for my research supplement, I attached the paper that I wrote for this specific research project. So they did see my research from my second research project, which was with the same mentor, and that was the AMIA one. So that was, I think that's the extent of my research slash sciencey experience from all of high school. Right now, I'm not as involved with cytosine diagnostics, although it's still, I think they're still working on it. We did end up like pushing out a few things. It wasn't as big of a success as we had hoped for it to be, but it is still like a work in progress. Right now, I'm also I'm not working on any more research. So yeah, I think that's most of it for research. But if we jump back a little bit, I can talk about sort of the clubs I was involved in, which you guys might be interested in. But in terms of school clubs, FBLA was my biggest involvement, I guess. I wasn't like, I was just a member for most of it, but as a member, I was very like involved, enthusiastic. Whenever there was like some sort of extra opportunity, I wanted to go to it, a workshop, a competition, stuff like that. So I guess I should explain what FBLA is first. So FBLA stands for Future Business Leaders of America. If you've heard of DECA, it's sort of parallel to that. So it's basically a competition that's related to business. I joined mostly because it was the biggest club in my school. So people were saying like, oh, like might as well try it out. And then I ended up placing first at regionals in my freshman year. So that was the first year that I joined. And then when I did that, it was a team event. Me and my team placed first at regionals. We were very surprised. We weren't expecting that. So we actually didn't hear our names when it was called, but we ended up going to state. And then we didn't qualify for nationals that year, but we couldn't go anyway. And the next year was sort of like, I just became very into it. And then I ran for state office in my junior year, which is basically like the officer level leadership position that's above your local chapter office. And I lost that election. That was like during COVID in March of 2020, I believe. But I ended up becoming our chapter vice president. So now, right now, I'm serving as the vice president of my chapter, which has been very exciting because I've got to implement some of the ideas that I've had in my mind for all 4 years. For example, like we have now chapter committees, and we're working on like bringing in speakers during meetings, and we're transforming our Instagram, like all of these ideas that I had, I can now do as an officer. So yeah, that's FBLA. Oh, and I also served as national social media ambassador just for like the end of my, I believe the end of my junior year towards that summer. So as a national social media ambassador, I was a writer. So I wrote like 1 or 2 articles. I didn't actually do much writing. The most of it was just like having an FBLA Instagram and then doing a lot of social media work around FBLA, like all of it, chapter level, state level, and national level. So that was super fun. I like my favorite part of that was probably just the networking aspect. I got to meet a lot of people, and a lot of other people reached out to me. So that, yeah, I think my favorite part of FBLA is probably just the people that I got to meet, whether it was in person or obviously towards the end, it was all virtual. But yeah, so I think that was the school club that I was most involved in. I was not involved in very many. So I was part of Key Club for a couple of years. In my freshman year, I tried Model UN. That did not stick. I think right now, FBLA is the only school club that I'm in. So I would definitely tell everyone else, like, if you're not super into a club, don't feel the need to stay in it. But outside of school, I am part of, I guess I'd call it a club. It's called Sammamish Teen Science Cafe Network. And basically, we host speakers every month. And it used to be that we would like provide free food. People would come in. It was at our local YMCA. And then it would be this interactive talk about some sort of science subject. And it was just like a very chill thing. It was very relaxed, and everyone just got to eat and learn something. So that was exciting. So that I did put that on my application, Sammamish Teen Science Cafe Network board member or something like that, because we had like this small leadership board, and then we'd basically just organize everything, communicate with the YMCA and with the speakers, all that stuff. So that was very fun. And I just realized that I am part of another club. So in my junior year, I joined yearbook, and this was mostly because I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I really like visual arts, but I wasn't really involved in any sort of organization to do with art or anything like that. And I also really enjoyed writing. So I figured, yearbook might be a good combination of those two. But the yearbook at my school is like, it's pretty private. So I just had to reach out to someone, ask them. They ended up saying, sure, you can join. And so I was a yearbook staff member last year. And then this year I was promoted to an editor. So now I'm a yearbook editor, which is honestly a lot of work. It's probably like 4 hours a week on average. And I have to manage like a group of staff and then report to the advisors. We have like regular meetings. We basically plan out the book and that kind of thing. So that's a lot of fun. Okay. And then I suppose I should talk about my art journey too, just because this was a pretty big part of not my application, but I did include it in my essays. So I have been drawing for like a very long time, of course, but I started my art Instagram in 7th grade, and then I ended up working on that for a few years. I had to take a couple of breaks that were pretty long, but overall, art has been like a major part of my character and my identity, and especially since I'd consider myself like a STEM student, since I go to a STEM school and a lot of my extracurriculars revolve around STEM. It's interesting to see how art can play into STEM and how art has benefited me as a STEM student, because I do feel like it's given me a lot of advantages, even though STEM and art aren't necessarily considered something that intertwine a lot. So art has been a big part of myself, and right now I'm learning how to oil paint, so that's fun. um, Sorry, did you want me to talk about like test scores and stats and that kind of thing?
Yeah, you could do that real quickly, and then we can answer questions afterwards.
Okay, great. So in terms of statistics, definitely don't think this is a big part of college applications, but I had a 4.0 unweighted GPA. My school did not do weighted GPA and we did not do rankings, so it was just 4.0. And then I took the SAT once, couldn't take it again, but I did submit it to Brown. I submitted a 1500 SAT to Brown. And then I think those were the only, well, I also submitted my APs, which I got 5s and 4s on. So I won't like list them all out because that'll take a while, but yeah.
I love how your journey goes to show how you don't have to have one specific interest to go into. Like you had arts and you also had like STEM interests.
Yeah,
And you also didn't really do a lot in school, which goes to show you don't have to do everything in school in order to get
yeah,
into the
definitely
faculty.
not.
Yeah. So we have a few questions in the comments, and we have a few that was sent in from people who couldn't make it. So I'll start with the comments first. Brina asked, why did you apply to Brown? And what is your favorite extracurricular? And do you have any advice for high school students that want to apply to Brown?
Yeah, of course. Okay, thank you for this question. Why did I apply to Brown? I actually did not decide to until pretty late. It was probably around September already, or even October, and the due date is November 1st. But what stuck out to me about Brown was at first just this stereotype of like, oh, Brown is the happiest Ivy, Brown is the most creative Ivy. And something that I value a lot when I look at colleges is school culture. So I don't want to go to a school where it's very like cutthroat competitive, that kind of vibe. That's not my thing. I want it to be a pretty chill environment. I value collaboration. So knowing those things about Brown really stuck out to me. And then that allowed me to do further research on it. I found out that they have a dance coalition where there are basically like a ton of different dance groups from like different cultures, different styles. And I'm a dancer, so that was very exciting to me. Because I'll be able to explore all of those different styles of dance. Brown is also right across the street from RISD, which is a super good art school, and Brown students are allowed to take classes there, which I thought was very exciting. And then, of course, there's the open curriculum, which I feel like everyone talks about, but I am like a pretty indecisive person. As I mentioned already, like I have a lot of different interests, and I'm not very certain on what I want to do as like a career. I more like to go to school just to explore all of these things because they're interesting to me. So I like the idea of getting to sort of do a bunch of different things and not have to worry about like doing very well in them because you need it for something else, or like if I do very very badly in a course, like that's okay. Like it's a no risk situation when you take classes at Brown. So, okay, what is your favorite extracurricular? I would say right now, probably dance. Dance is my most involved extracurricular right now, just because everything else is virtual, but I'm still dancing in studio. So I get to see my dance friends, and I do that multiple times a week. And it's honestly very freeing to be able to sort of get out of my room for like a couple times a week and dance for a while. Um, yeah, I also enjoy art, but I would say my favorite extracurricular is probably dance. And then advice for high school students that want to apply to Brown. That's a good question. I'd say if it's about Brown specifically, I think that Brown really likes to see students who are open-minded, who are ambitious, and sort of not so serious. Like, I think if you're applying to Brown, feel free to just like relax in your essays and like your video portfolio. The friends that I have now who got into Brown with me, their video portfolios are all like not so serious. Like you can be goofy, you can have a lot of personality in your essays. Just along the way in your high school journey, don't be thinking too much about like, oh my gosh, what will colleges want to see from me? Instead, just focus on, what do you want? What do you want from your high school journey, and what do you enjoy doing?
That was some really great advice. And we have another question from Matthew. He said, do you have any tips for studying for AP classes and Bouncy extracurriculars? And you can also talk about how many AP classes you took.
Okay, so I think by graduation, I'll have 11 AP credits, so I'm not sure what the exact breakdown for that is. I think I took 0 in my freshman year, 2 in my sophomore year, 5 in my junior year, and now I'm taking 4. And time management, it was something that I struggled with a lot in high school. I mean, I still do, of course, but it's a process. I think for studying for AP classes, in my junior year, which was when they were all online, I used the College Board videos, like, religiously. Like, I watched a lot of them, I would take notes on them, but my biggest tip would be to make sure that you're not waiting until, like, March and April to start preparing for your APs. I think if you follow along in your class, like, throughout the entire year, not necessarily for the purpose of the AP test, but just for the purpose of knowing the content as it's going, then you'll tend to be fine when it comes to the AP test. So, for example, for me, for Calculus AB last year, I basically just, like, did well for the year because I made sure to never fall behind. I asked questions when I needed it, and that ended up making it so that when the AP test was coming, I didn't really prepare at all. Like, I didn't buy any test prep books. I didn't really do any practice problems. I just focused on my other APs, knowing that I already felt comfortable with calc. I probably did a bit of review, but not too much. I made, like, study guides, and then I ended up getting a 5 on that. So my biggest advice would be to just not let yourself fall behind. And then for any sort of, like, big test, what always helps me is creating, like, a one-page front and back study guide where it's basically a comprehensive review of everything. If one page isn't enough, like, 2 pages is good too. But when you write things down, it'll, like, get ingrained into your memory, and it helps best if you have visuals, like, draw things out, that kind of thing. So that would be my biggest tip for studying. In terms of balancing extracurriculars, my biggest tip would be to have a calendar. So my teacher in junior year, who was the same one that mentored us for our research competition, she required all of us to get, like, a desk calendar, like the kind that you physically hang. Mine is right over there. You physically hang it, like, right in front of your workspace, and then that's where you can write down all of your activities and, like, reminders, sort of visualize everything in one place. That's the most helpful thing for me. Um, Obviously, you can have a calendar on your phone or on your computer, but then it's not right in front of you when you need it. And I think the easy access part is very helpful.
Okay, and I think one more question came in, and that'll be our last question. So Phil asked if you had any essay advice.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the essays of college applications is actually something I really enjoyed doing. So my biggest advice would be to stop thinking of it as, like, oh, how can I most effectively BS my way into this college? Like, I think a lot of people adopt that mindset. I'm not sure why, but I think that's a dangerous game to play because you don't want your essay to sound artificial or sound like you're not being your authentic self. I think try to think of it as, like, a genuine opportunity for reflection, and when you view it like that, you'll end up producing something that's both authentic and very unique because obviously you yourself are unique. So no one's going to be able to come up with an essay that is the same as what only fits your identity and your experiences. Um, I read a lot of college essay guide blogs. So those are super, super helpful because he gives you exercises that will allow you to do that reflection that I just talked about. Um, while it's totally okay to read, like, examples, I think it's actually a good thing if your essays don't necessarily follow what everyone else's go like. I know a lot of my friends, like, they'll read a bunch of essays and then they're like, oh my gosh, my essay is not really, my essay did not approach this the same way as the other essays. And in my opinion, that's totally okay. Like, I think you should be able to take risks in your essays, try to think of like an approach that's unique to your story. And then that will be the factor that helps you stand out.
So I will have one last question that'll be coming from me. We have a community that helps students with like college admissions, financial success, and career aspirations. And my question is, what is one tip that you want to give to high schoolers that would give them like an unfair advantage to know at this time?
That is a good question, because my biggest tip would honestly just to be, I would say, like, do what you love, but not just do what you love, but, like, pursue it. Like, I think one of the regrets I have is I focused on a ton of different things, but I never really like, I got really excited about something, and then I'd get really excited about something else, and I'd stop working on the first thing. So, like, if you have an idea or if you have some dream, like, just pursue it at full speed and, like, don't stop until you actually achieve it, and then you can move on to the next thing. So while it's good to explore different options, try to go big on that one thing that you've always been hoping to go big on.
That's some really great advice. And with that, you'll have 30 seconds to promote yourself and put any social medias out there.
Okay, do you want me to just say it out loud?
Yeah, you can say it out loud.
Okay, cool. So I think my art account is written down here at Arts by Claire. That's on TikTok and Instagram. And then my personal Instagram account is claire._y. So if you had any other questions or if I didn't talk about something that you wanted covered, you can reach out to me on either of those platforms. And I also have a YouTube, but I don't really have many videos on there. But feel free to look at it if you want. It's just Claire Yang.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Thank